Welcome to Chain Break, the podcast that explores the history and secrets to success from today's Midwest-based family businesses. And now from Bryan Equipment Studio 44 in Goshen, Ohio, here's your host, Rick Bryan.
We're back, and I'm so happy to be here. I've got a special guest today that we had a guest, the Chief Executive Officer of Stihl AG, Michael Traub. So Michael's been with the company almost 3 years now, but I thought it would be just an absolute honor to have him on the podcast and just catch up with him on all things Stihl. But before we do that, I just get a little background on where you came from. I know a little time with Bosch, a little time with Serta, but if you could just give the listeners your a quick synopsis of your career up to when you came on board with Stihl.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's a great honor. We had a great meeting, as you mentioned, yesterday with dealers. Had a chance to meet the team, and I'm very happy that I'm here with Bryan Equipment Sales. Yeah, I really had an interesting career in many ways because, and all kind of going back to Stihl, I grew up actually 60 miles south of the Stihl headquarters. Wow. So I'm from Baden-Württemberg. I'm Swabian, like the Stihl family. I studied in Stuttgart.
Right.
So it goes way back. 60 miles distance from our Stihl headquarters in a small farming community, a very small village with 20,000 people. And after I served in the German army for 2 years, and thereafter, as I mentioned, my studies took me to Stuttgart.
Nice. And from there, you start your career. You end up overseas. You speak 5 languages, right? German, English.
Not because I wanted. I was very lucky during my studies. I did an internship at Bosch, at the time Bosch Power Tools. That was located as well in Stuttgart, and they offered second internship abroad in Singapore. And so I did that for 6 months during my studies, came back, finalized my studies, and then they called me and said, look, we want you back. And by the way, not in Germany, but we want you in Asia. So really my first assignment that I had took me right to Southeast Asia as a 24-year-old. And I thought I end up in Singapore, but then, not did I end up in Singapore. They told me we have a project now in Vietnam. So we opened the Vietnamese market in 1994 when it was still a communist country.
Wow.
It was a good experience. I think what's important, what's the takeaway for me was really, it was not a typical corporate career, but I learned to work in an environment with a few people only, building new markets, setting up new subsidiaries, new business. And I was not spoiled by a big corporate overhead and support structure. So it really taught me a lot of things.
On the Bosch side, were you the appliance side or all of it?
I was first power tools.
Okay.
And then 2 years into Singapore, appliances did the same. The appliance division did the same thing that we did at Power Tools, and they asked me to join them. So then I joined them and continued my career with the appliance business, building up business in Asia, based in Singapore, but responsible for Southeast Asia, Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand. So just a wonderful thing to happen. And again, for your listeners, and especially the ones that are early in their career, be curious, do things that nobody else really thought of, and kind of do things that are out of the ordinary, think out the box, because life starts really outside your comfort zone.
It's about the experience.
Yeah.
So then you end up in Brazil.
Then I had a step in between in Germany. I became the CFO of our German subsidiary and did that for a number of years. And then I ended up in Brazil because my boss told me that I was part of the acquisition team of a company, and it didn't go as planned.
Yeah.
And they say, you go down there yourself and fix it.
All right, and that's where you pick up Portuguese.
That's where I learned to speak Portuguese.
Which translates to Spanish easily also.
It translates easily. It's easier for Portuguese-speaking people to understand Spanish than the other way around. But yeah, it's a wonderful language, wonderful culture. Really, really fell in love with Brazil. Lived there for close to 5 years. It's a wonderful country, however, plagued by a lot of safety issues, and just a lot of that the country has to deal with. It would be much more of a powerhouse,
globally
if they didn't have those issues.
Yeah, I've never felt uncomfortable though in southern Brazil where your factory is.
That's right.
I've always felt very comfortable down there in Porto Alegre, and it's far enough, I think, away, right, from Sao Paulo and the politics of all that.
It's Sao Paulo is just a mega city. It's in the meantime, I believe 25 million people that live there, and many of them don't really have the standard of living to support their lifestyle. So there's just a lot of violence there.
I'm jumping ahead because I want to continue on with your career because you end up in the United States for several years. But the Brazilian steel plant, they do magnesium die casting. Mm-hmm. They make products specifically really just for the South American market. I know they export globally some products, but and I know you're new to less than 36 months with the company, but what is it? Did I sum it up right? Most of it's for South American consumption out of that factory, other than the magnesium die casting.
That's absolutely correct. We're very proud that we can consider ourselves market leader as well in Latin America, based on the strong presence that we have in the town is called São Leopoldo. It's close to Porto Alegre. Wonderful community, great workforce, great management team that we have there. And they produce, we call it emerging market products for Brazil, but also for many other countries in Latin America, Middle America, Mexico. They export as well to emerging markets in Asia, India, even China.
All right.
So very, very competitive factory. And they produce cylinders for the steel group worldwide. Guide bars and a lot of
accessories,
magnesium die cast parts that are integral to our global success.
Yeah, for the steel listeners out there, the diehard steel listeners, I found it fascinating, and you could attest to this, that state in Brazil, most of the children, for a while, the first language was German, right? I mean, it's a very heavily German population that immigrated there from Germany.
And I have to say, when you look back, Brazil 50 years ago was very different. They had a military dictatorship in Brazil. It was not a democracy.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. And you know what? I'm so very proud to work for Stihl. And especially when I look at that history, 50 years ago, 50, 51, 52 years ago, a lot of decisive things happened in the steel universe. And Hans-Peter Stihl, who is now 91 years old, turning 92, still very, very present in the organization. And we still work a lot with him and get his guidance. He set up a factory in southern Brazil during the military dictatorship. Yeah, 1973. He set up the same year a chainsaw factory in Switzerland.
Oh, the chain factory.
Exactly,
the saw chain factory.
The factory.
And then the year after that.
And the year after that, in this land where milk and honey flows, right? We set up the Virginia Beach operations, which is till today largest operation of steel in the world. But it all happened, imagine, it all happened within 2 years.
I've never put that together before until you just said that. The amount of risk and capital, and he laid it he just put it out there.
Yeah,
I mean,
there was no email, there was no internet.
Yeah.
I don't even think there was a fax machine. I don't know.
Probably not in the 70s.
So,
Yeah.
But imagine, it was certainly not that easy to travel by plane to all these
Locations,
places.
yeah.
And then to make I go to Virginia Beach, I go to Porto Alegre, I go to Switzerland. These were bold moves, but till today, super decisive for the success of Stihl. And this is, I believe, why we have such not only great brands, but wonderful products that work for our professional customers and our homeowners.
The foresight to do that 50 years ago, it's incredible. 5 decades ago.
Absolutely
right?
incredible.
Incredible. So how do you end up in the United States? You're in Brazil, and then how do you end up here in Southern California?
So 2008, my mission was over. We actually decided to sell the company to GE because we wanted to really focus on North America, Europe, and China at that time at Bosch. And GE, on the other hand, wanted to expand to Latin America, so it was so we closed that chapter and moved on. So, and I was offered to take over the leadership of Bosch for North America, US and Canada. And that operation was based, on the one hand, our headquarters was based in sunny Southern California, Irvine, California, and our manufacturing operations was based in New Bern, North Carolina. And in a little town close to Knoxville, Tennessee. So we had our luxury product Thermador, which is very high-end kitchen appliances were made in Tennessee. Part of it was made in North Carolina, especially dishwashers, and part of it was made obviously in Europe and in Asia.
All right. Neat.
Yeah, and so I ended up in Southern California.
Yeah.
And after 5 years in a huge city, indeed I was rather happy to live in smaller communities again that were a little safer. So I was very, very
less
happy.
traffic. Yeah.
Less traffic. I only later learned that California has very tricky politics, but that's maybe a different story.
We don't want to go.
We're not going to talk about
different. That'll be a whole nother episode on German politics.
And as a German, I don't want to comment on American politics.
I would like you. I'm sorry to bring it up, but jumping around again. But just comment to the listeners. I mean, I know it's very current, and some of them may listen to this later. But I mean, right now, currently in Europe, because we are basically, we started as an agricultural company, the Stihl family in forestry. Well, explain a little bit in my simple economic vernacular, what is taking place with the farmers in Europe and what the regulations that are being imposed upon them. And I mean, we're all seeing it here in the United States. What if you had to pick the 2 or 3 things that are most egregious to the farmer right now in the European community? What would those things be?
The farmers in Europe are very angry right now.
Yeah.
They have to compete against farmers from outside Europe. So for every regulation that goes out, 3 new ones come in. And a lot of them hit agriculture, right? With climate change and with a lot of considerations that policymakers have in Brussels. The farmers very often have to pay a price and get new issues put on their desk every day. At the same time,
so they can't be competitive.
Because their income has been reduced year after year.
Yeah.
And they still, like in Germany, they get certain subsidies for the gas they use in their cars and their agricultural equipment, because they use the gas not on streets, but on their properties. So it says, well, why should they pay for building roads if they don't use the roads?
Right.
And now the government wanted to take away those subsidies. And they say, look, if you do that, I become even more uncompetitive. And they went out on the streets, and it was, in Germany, it was pretty ugly. The government had to take back some of the decisions they made.
Well,
but the farmers are still under a lot of pressure to make money and to make a living. And a lot of smaller farms. It's not like in the US where farms have become really huge,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And the economies of scale are there.
Yep.
In Germany, there's still a lot of family farms, and just the absolute dollar amount that they have for a living is limited.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame.
It's a shame.
It is a shame.
But one thing that we talk about, what's the takeaway for listeners? Right? What do you learn from? What are things that impacted my life? That we made it out of that crisis as winners and came out stronger than we were before. But it was a tough time.
Oh, absolutely, for all of us.
And then in 2014, after many, many years at Bosch, more than 2 decades, I made a decision that I didn't think I ever would be making. I left Bosch because I had a great opportunity of merging the 2 largest mattress manufacturers in the world at that time, Serta and Siemens. And I did that for 5 years in that job, and then 2 more years for the investors in another role. And that was also very, very interesting because now I worked for Americans all of a sudden. And I've worked more than 2 decades for Germans, and it's very different. The key difference is that, and I say that with the utmost respect to me being German, but what I learned having worked for American investors is that things just move a little quicker, more decisively, and things happen.
Yeah.
You know? And that's something that is a key lesson, and it's been very impactful for me. I think also my management style today has been very much impacted by that. Get stuff done, right, and get it done quickly. It's one of my key mantras.
When I think about the quality side of it, that is probably the number one thing that our customers and our customers' customers have grown to appreciate. Mm-hmm. Year after year, they can count on that quality from Stihl.
But we will stick to our guns because we believe that the broke customer who depends on us.
One of the key success factors, the number one key success factor you mentioned to the group was just what you said. You said passionate about the customer.
Yeah.
I love that. Passionate about the customer.
We made the decision to invest in Romania it was just shortly after I started in end of 21. So a lot of the preparation work already had been done. I was lucky enough to be there and say, okay, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So really it was Martin Schwartz, my colleague, the COO, was the driving force behind that. And I was flying with Martin a couple of weeks after the war in Ukraine started to select sites, the exact sites. And it was. I have to say, it was quite scary when you sit in a plane and suddenly you fly closer and closer to Ukraine, and there's no air traffic anymore. So it's I think it's good perspective for your listeners. In Europe, we are very close to
a 20-hour drive. You said
what's happening in Ukraine. It's I think not even a 2-hour flight.
Yeah.
And it's our factory is located. Our factory that will come up will be actually doing the groundbreaking in April. Good access for Western Europe as well as Eastern Europe. And why are we building that factory? We thought long and hard about whether or not we should invest in China for battery products, but we were strongly convinced that while we are very proud of our operations in China, we need to de-risk, right? We cannot put all our eggs into the Chinese basket.
Yeah.
And logistically, Romania made a lot of sense for us. So, and Romania will not only be building products for Europe, but you also in the US will be getting products out of our Romanian factory.
Well, again, like I mentioned with Brazil, limiting that risk from any catastrophe, and of course how relevant it is now with the Red Sea and the additional cost to ship all the way around Africa versus coming through the canal. These are more and more companies are looking to do this type of diversification to limit the amount of exposure they have from that kind of risk.
In a way, a lot of people talk about deglobalization. It's not a deglobalization, but I think people make smarter choices about where they really want to go.
And more come to the United States too.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
it's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. There was a certain deindustrialization when I moved to the U.S. in 2008. I believe there was much less emphasis on industrial jobs. I realized that when we were negotiating with state governments about where to locate our factories, we felt very welcome in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And it was easy for us to leave California.
Right.
So it's just, I think that hasn't changed today, but there's, especially when you look at the eastern part of the United States, I think and also Texas for that matter, I think they're doing a fantastic job in attracting manufacturing jobs.
Agreed.
So I think the biggest risk is that to recognize, I think retailers have to recognize what got them here won't get them there. With that transformation that will happen over time, that there will be dual technologies in retail. There will be gas, it will be important for a long, long time.
Right.
But there will be more and more battery products in there. And it's a different level of service, it's a different level of repair, it's a different level of how you do business and how you sell a platform, you don't sell the product. And those retailers, those servicing retailers that really care about the customer, passionate about the customers, have to retain those customers, and they have to sell to them where they want to be sold to. That means not only in their stores, but the retailers need to find a way to transact online with our help.
Yeah.
And to meet them where they are. What we want to avoid is that in that transformation from gas to battery, end consumers or landscapers go to big box, get a bad service, a bad product, and just can't do the job the way they used to.
Yeah.
And we have to strengthen our retail community to make that happen. I know we have a lot of programs for that, but I really want our retailers who listen in on this podcast to consider, really open their minds to say, look, I need to find new ways and different ways to attract and retain my customers.
Well said. Well said. A plan, a strategy is vital to the success, right?
Yeah.
It's vital.
What I love about we have 55,000 retailers.
Wow.
In the steel world.
Yeah.
We have, and you know the number better than I, 11,000, I guess, in the US.
11,000.
2,000 something in Canada. And those people really care about the customer. And they have a brand with Stihl that stands behind their product. And if they stand behind what they do in terms of their service they offer, repair, blah, blah, we've got a fantastic combination. And we want to stick to that winning formula.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think that's wonderful words of wisdom, and I appreciate you saying that and sharing that with the group. Is there anything business-wise? I'm going to ask you a couple silly questions here at the end, but if I've not asked you something or something that I've missed, obviously, you have a team back in Germany, a team down in Virginia Beach. Thank you to all them, right, for all the hard work and effort every single day. But is there anything I've missed?
Well, one thing we talked about a lot the last couple of days was both with the dealers as well as with your management team or new businesses we entered into. And that's not only obviously that we're highly committed to the battery side of the business, in all aspects, everything that cuts blows,
right.
But also our investments and new business in wheeled goods. And I want to repeat it here because I think it's important for our listeners that we know that we want to win in wheeled goods, meaning zero-turn business, our lawnmower business, be it gas or battery, other potential new ideas for our retailers. And this is not just because we want to try that out and dabble in it, but we're firmly committed, the family is committed, management team is committed to make that work, and we will make it work. So we are in the wheel goods business and we're here to stay.
Yeah. And I think it's important for the listeners on the walk behind business. You alluded to it, but that's really where Dr. Stihl started.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was 30 years ago.
Oh, and
So
he's the
Stihl,
biggest fan of that.
so Stihl has been in the wheel good business for 30 years
Absolutely.
in Europe.
Tractors.
So you guys know what you're doing when it comes to wheel goods. There's 30 years of history there. Now, maybe not so much on the RZ side, but when it comes to the walk behind mowers that we're introducing this year, it's not like we just started this. You guys, the family and the factory has been doing this for over 30 years, right?
Yeah. And you'll be visiting with your management team our factory in Austria in April. So I think that will give your team as well good insights and see what kind of competence we have there.
I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for that. You've traveled all over the world. I know I asked Dr. Stihl this. I've asked Thomas Elsner. He had a great story. What's your scariest moment worldwide traveling for business? What sticks out in your mind? Tell the listeners that one time, or maybe that was a flight through Ukrainian airspace. That would have been pretty scary.
That was pretty scary.
Yeah.
That was the scariest thing, really. And the two scary things I'll focus on one.
Right.
So when I lived in Brazil, I came back from a business trip and I lived in Sao Paulo. And the Sao Paulo city airport called Congonhas, it's in the middle of the city. It's like an aircraft carrier surrounded by houses. And it was strong winds. And you're a pilot, you will appreciate that. There was actually a big accident with 737 when it was running on it. A year before I had my incident there. And we approached it first time. I just try to call it start through.
Go around.
Go around.
Yep.
Okay, went around. Second time, attempt to land. Go around.
And again.
And then people were starting to freak out, right? And that was most probably, I don't want to relive that. So we barely made it on the third attempt. So that was good. I have a lot of other funny things. That
my rule is if you go around once, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like there's another airport that's safer. The winds are lined up. If you can't get it in after one time, it's probably time to go somewhere else. Maybe two times, but not three.
Google map it and look at that airport. It is crazy.
Yeah. Again,
there are 1,000 fun stories when you travel. But sometimes you realize, when you're out on the road a lot, in the air a lot, it just can be that wrong time, wrong place. But again, I've deemed myself very lucky to be able to have so many experiences.
Well, do you have a favorite place you've ever been to? Like, oh my gosh, I go back.
Wherever my wife is.
Good answer.
She might be listening.
Good answer. Mine would have been similar answer to that. I'm going to wrap it up, and I always wrap it up. Do you have a favorite charity, or even if it's European charity? I know you all have helped out with the Ukraine. There was over 100 cut quicks, right, at the beginning of the conflict.
Correct.
Is there one in particular that you and your family?
You mean Stihl or personal?
More personal. For joining me today, I'd like to thank you by making a donation.
There is a wonderful organization in Georgia. I lived in Atlanta for a number of years, and many of your listeners will know Zach Brown, country singer. He's from Lake Oconee.
Yeah.
And we met Zach a number of years ago, and he's got a wonderful institution. It's called Camp Southern Ground, where underprivileged children and veterans and children of veterans go for summer camps. And he does a fantastic job. It would also be worthwhile if we ever have the chance to go there together. I'd love to take you there. That's one thing that I really love, because it really helps underprivileged children, not only in Georgia, but across the United States. And especially, they have a very, very strong veterans program that I really like.
Well, that's right up Faith and I's alley. Always looking for anything to help children out. And so we'd be honored to do a donation to that charity in your wife's name. So that's I look forward to looking it up. I like
look it up if you ever want to go there.
I look forward to that. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. A busy schedule. I know you're heading east and then heading all the way across back to Germany. But it's been an honor to have you. Is there any final things that we need to talk about? Are we good?
Well, I want to thank you and the team. It was such a wonderful, warm welcome. People were bragging about what I would see, and they were telling me they will see a great operation run by great people. And exactly that happened. So I'm very thankful that we had time to spend together the last couple of days.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. And everybody stay safe, be humble, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been Chain Break with Rick Bryan. Thanks for listening, and remember to subscribe to Chain Break now on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, stay humble and be kind.
Don't need no big box confusion.